Have you ever seen something that truly amazed you? I mean, just something that was amazing. You don't have to go far. At our house, you can walk out sometimes, and if you're not careful, you'll walk into a spider web. And that's really amazing. That little spider, all through the night, made that web, and very delicate. And I find that pretty amazing. And before I go any further, I do want to mention something, that I'm going to make half the people here maybe frustrated, the other half happy, okay? And here's why, okay? I kind of try to decide whether I should, because I've got a rather long sermon. And I thought to myself, should I give it all? And call some people saying, okay, I want this to be over with, I'm tired. And an old preacher I knew, Fred Demert, used to say, the mind can only comprehend what the butt can endure. So that's always wise advice. So some people are going to say, yay, you're not going to be here all day. But then on the same token, if you want to hear the conclusion of this, you have to be here next week. Or you have to at least watch it on the internet. Because probably, you ever watch a TV show and you're really into it, and then then it goes off and says, to be continued next week. And you think, I'm not going to be here next week. And you're really upset because you did not see the end of the show. It's kind of how this is going to be. Because I'm probably, you won't know, because everything I'm going to say is going to be kind of pointless until you hear the last 3 minutes of next week's sermon. So, anyway, so we're going to have to shut this off somewhere along the way and say, continue next week. But nevertheless, that spider is amazing. And, of course, you can knock it down. And you somewhat feel guilty almost, you know. All that work that spider did, you knock it down. So that's amazing. Something else I found somewhat amazing is a hummingbird. You know, a hummingbird, as I understand, the only bird that can fly backwards. And I find that pretty amazing. He just hovers there, you know. And I find that really amazing. And then something else that you're not going to like, maybe, but ticks. Now, I don't like ticks. But it's really amazing. The little ticks will get on a blade of grass. And what they do, they put their two front legs, I don't know if they're called legs, but I'm going to call them up like this. And then they just sit there and wait. They're called questing. And they're waiting for a warm-blooded animal or a person to come by. And instantly they can detect the ammonia coming out of your body or your carbon dioxide. Instantly. They can't jump on you. They can't hop. They just instantly detect you as you brush it, and they'll latch onto you. Even though you don't like ticks, you got to admit that's pretty amazing. Now, Solomon spoke about some things that he thought were amazing. Now, he didn't mention none of those things, but that's okay. Everybody's amazed or impressed by different things, and but there's some things he thought were almost unexplainable. He was amazed by it. One of the things, and we're going to read the passage in a minute, but one of the things that amazed Solomon, that I'm sure amazes us too, is how a bird floats through the air. How the bird just floats through the air. And he thought that was amazing. Another thing that he thought was amazing, and he records in Proverbs 30, we're going to read it in a moment, was how snakes has no legs, but a snake's how it crawls over a rock. A serpent. He thought that was amazing. And then he was amazed by the navigational ability of the early seamen out there in the ocean, how they can navigate their ship through the storms. He thought that was amazing. And the other thing he thought was amazing, the way a man acts around a woman. He thought that was quite amazing too. A young man acts around a maid. We all have heard that men act stupid when they get around a pretty girl. So, anyway, Proverbs 30:18. These are the three things that are too amazing for me. Really four that I do not understand. the way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a snake on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a young woman. He thought that was amazing. Here's something else is amazing. The basket. I'm going to tell you why that's amazing in a minute, okay? Years ago, my mom and dad took Miro and I to Alaska on a cruise. And one of the guides there at the one of the tourist traps, okay, I'll call it tourist trap. She was amazed by how the native Alaskan Indians, how they could get on their little dugout canoes and they could go sail up and down the coastline, and then come back to the very port of entry. They didn't call it a port of entry, the very river they came out of. She thought that was amazing. She talked with praise about how the Indians, Alaskans, could do that on the little dugout canoe. And me with my mouth, of course, I told her, I said, well, that's interesting, but I said, the Vikings, they came all the way across the North Atlantic, and sailed the coastlines of North America, and then traveled all the way back to North Atlantic to Holland, or not Holland, to Norway or Denmark. That's amazing. But anyway, a few years ago, Miro and I went out to visit my mom out in Arizona, and while there, we visited the Kitt National Observatory. And the Kitt National Observatory was in the heart of the Papago Indian Reservation. Right smack dab there in the Papago Indian Reservation is the Kitt National Observatory. Now, the Papago Indian Reservation covers 4,340,984 square miles. It's huge. It's the second largest reservation in the country. There are approximately 11,000 Papago Indians living on that reservation. 11,000 of these Papago Indians on this reservation of over 4 million square miles. Now, they give you a little deal about that. Harrison has a population around 12,000, and it has 11.5 square miles. So these people really dispersed through the reservation. Now, Papago is a name that we knew them when we lived in Arizona. It was given to them, the name Papago was given to them by the Pima Indians, and it was adopted by the Spanish in the early or late 1600s. And the word Papago means people who eat beans. So, and so at the heart of the Bean Eaters reservation was the Kitt National Observatory. And for various reasons, a site was chosen by, in 1958 by Aidan B. Mennell. He was with the National Science Foundation, which is administered by the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy. Now, I don't have all this vast knowledge in my head. I had to study to learn this stuff, okay? The association was founded in 1957 with encouragement from the National Science Foundation, and at its founding had the participation of 7 universities: University of Chicago, University of California, Harvard, University of Indiana, University of Michigan, Ohio State, and University of Wisconsin. And so he chose a site to build this observatory. And he scoured around many, many possible locations. And then he found the site. But before he could build the observatory, he had to get permission from who? The Bean Eaters, the Papagos, because it was on their reservation. And now, in 1986, I think it was, somewhere around there, the Papago decided they didn't like being called Bean Eaters, so their name was changed to the Hona O Adam people, which means people of the desert. So they're no longer Bean Eaters, now the people of the desert. But with all the dumb luck, I mean, talk about the stupidity of this scientist, this renowned, famous scientist, wouldn't you know it, the very place he picked to put the National Observatory, of all the dumb luck, was on a sacred mountain. Can you imagine that? He found a sacred mountain. The Indians weren't happy because that's our sacred mountain. And so I thought that was pretty amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. The Bean Eaters weren't happy about observatory being on their sacred mountain. But they took the chiefs down to Tucson, and they allowed them to see the Stewart Observatory, which is administered by the University of Arizona. And the Indians thought, hey, this is a good deal, especially the fact that they're going to get some revenue from it. So they decided to lease the sacred mountain to for the use of Kitt Peak National Observatory. And but the only catch, the catch was not just the lease, the catch was that Kitt Peak National Observatory had to buy all their electricity from the Papago Power Company. That was the deal. If you're going to build the observatory on our sacred mountain, you've got to buy all your electricity from the Papago Power Company. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds fair, except there was no such thing as the Papago Power Company. It didn't exist. And it took them 12 years before they finally got it up and running. So in the meantime, I guess they had their own private generators. But as soon as they got enough financing and probably loans and probably grants and so forth, 12 years later, about 1970, they started the Papago Power Company. And so we've been buying our power from the Papago Power Company ever since. But prior to that time, prior to the time of this amazing deal they made, do you know what the Papago Indians were known for? Baskets. Weaving baskets. Now, that's a pretty unique talent, I would say. I don't know that I could weave a basket. But nevertheless, they were known for weaving baskets. So the white man comes there, wants to build an observatory on the sacred mountain, and the tribal god, Atoyi, was not happy with the squatters there, but they made a deal. They're going to lease it. They're going to buy power from the power company, and they built their observatory. Now, I went there to observe that with my folks in the mid-1960s, not too long after it officially opened up to tourism. And now there's 26 observatories that dot the mountain of Kitt Peak, the sacred mountain. Now the tour we took was pretty interesting, which is amazing in itself because most tour guides, you can't understand a word they say. But this tour guide was very thoughtful, and he enunciated his words very well, and it was easy, actually able to understand and follow what he was saying. And I was amazed by the great gifts God has given our people. If you want to put science aside, observing the heavens, just the manufacture of one of these telescopes is amazing. Of course, telescopes have come a long way from when they first were introduced to the public. Here's what I've read about telescopes. A telescope is an instrument that aids in the observation of remote objects by collecting electromagnetic radiation, such as visible light. The first known practical telescope was invented in the Netherlands. I thought for sure they were going to say Kenya, but no, in the Netherlands at the beginning of the 17th century. Using glass lenses they found used in the terrestrial application and astronomy. Within a few decades, the reflecting telescope was invented, which used mirrors. 20th century, many new types of telescopes were invented, including radio telescopes in the 1930s and infrared telescopes in the 1960s. Now, don't get too uppity. Don't get too uppity about our people inventing telescopes, because the native people, they weave some really neat baskets. So if you start feeling uppity about the inventions of our people, consider the basket. All right. So we looked at what called the MAR 4mm telescope, which was completed in 1973. That's what we saw. That's the one we looked at. And the telescope has a reflecting mirror of 4 meters, or just a little over 13 feet, so it's quite large. The large domes you see at the observatory in a housing that fits over the telescope. The telescope is not actually attached to this outer dome, it should get it to protect it. Part of the suspension of the Mayer 4-millimeter telescope was made off-site. It had to be trucked to Kitt Peak. So it made it somewhere else, had to bring it to the mountain. Now, I don't know how many people have been to Kitt Peak, but the mountain going up is very windy and very tight curves. And this one piece was quite long. And they had a difficulty, how they're going to get it up this, to top of this mountain, because it was manufactured off-site. So they did, they brought it here, and it got to the tight curves where the truck couldn't just go around it. They brought huge cranes in and built huge cranes that would lift the back end of this truck with the large telescope, lift it back and swing it out over the mountain, over the valley, until the truck got around, and then it brought it back onto the road again. And wherever there was a tight curve where it couldn't do it, they would do it. That's amazing. I'm told, we sometimes really stop to consider the amazing things that our people have done. And but the Papago, they had engineers too. We have to understand. Papagos we weren't the only one great engineers. The Papago had engineers too. And the Papago engineers were able to teach their squaws that if you tie 2 sticks together, you can knock off the fruit of the top of saguaro cactus. That's amazing. That's what their engineers did. And these cactus are pretty tall. They grow 200 years old, and some would get a high 50 foot tall. I don't know if some of you have ever been out west or not, but the saguaro cactus mainly in southern Arizona and New Mexico, a little bit into California. And but nevertheless, there are numerous different kinds of telescopes, and each has their own special function. Here's what I read about a telescope with an equatorial mount. All right, an equatorial mount. The mount is for instruments that follow the rotation of the sky by having one rotation axis parallel to the Earth's axis of rotation. The advantage of an equatorial mount lies in its ability to allow the instrument attached to it to stay fixed on any object in the sky by driving one axis at a constant speed. So you can aim it toward a certain heavenly body, and as we know the Earth moves and all this sort of stuff, what attached to that, and then the rotation of the Earth kept that star or whatever they're looking at in its object, in a viewfinder, I'll call it. But I don't know. That may be confusing to some of us, considering it, but it's an amazing ability that somebody on our team was able to devise that. So while we're looking at and putting a focus on some heavenly body way up in the skies, the Papagos, their biggest challenge was dodging the falling fruit from the saguaro cactus. All right, so I know that's some pretty complicated stuff, and I have to tell you something. If it was up to me, I'd probably be weaving baskets. Most of us would be weaving baskets. Most of us don't have in us to. Maybe we could learn. A lot of people learn stuff, but to explore and go into the areas and study those things, pretty complicated. The point is that over the years, God has given us some really smart people. He's given us some really smart people. And while we are not all of us are not capable of being the scientists can spy into the sky. While you and I may not have the ability to develop little tiny cameras that fill up a person's artery to check out their heart, or perform delicate operations on a baby still in its mother's womb. Amazing things our people have done. Well, we may not have the ability to do those things. Nevertheless, we do have within us the ability to create civilizations. In us, we have the ability to create, we have the genes to carry on those kind of people. You may only be a basket weaver, and I may only be a basket weaver, but you carry the genes of a Galileo, the genes of Isaac Newton, the genes of a Werner von Braun in your blood. We also carry the genes of a Thomas Edison and Richard Wagner and Michelangelo. You carry the genes that creates civilization and a peaceful society, where kids can walk safely to school, where ladies are respected, and where self-government can grow. We may not be able to do that, but we create a peaceful, civilized society. In our blood, we carry the genes which builds cathedrals, paint masterpieces, gathers knowledge, and create libraries. We may not be a Galileo, we may not be an Isaac Newton, we may not be a Werner von Braun, but we are a people that can create those kind of people. In Genesis 15:5, God tells Abraham, "Look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou shalt be able to number them." If not before, at least by that time and after that time of Abraham, God has put within us the desire to count the stars. And we have been doing it ever since. Not satisfied with simply gazing into the night, three young scientists in the Netherlands invented the reflecting telescope in 1608. Galileo greatly improved upon it, the design, the following year. His improvement was based on the idea that the objective or light gathering element could be a mirror instead of a lens was being investigated soon after the invention of the refracting telescope. The potential advantage of using parabolic mirrors led to many proposed designs and several attempts to build reflecting telescopes. In 1668, Isaac Newton built the first practical reflecting telescope of a design which now bears his name, the Newtonian Reflector. Do you understand all that? Maybe not. But here's the deal. Our basket weavers carry the genes which can create scientists of superior intellect, while their basket weavers only create more basket weavers. Part of the knowledge needed to make these incredible telescopes that can peer deep into the heavens is to know how fast light travels. How fast does light travel? The speed of light is what we often hear about when scientists talk about light years. So how fast does light travel? The path traveled by light in a vacuum during a time interval is 1 to 299,792,458 of a second. How did they figure that out? I'm not even sure what it means. But I do know somebody on our team figured it out. I wonder if the Tohono O'odham people ever calculate how many baskets they can weave in a light year. I don't know. To be honest with you, I wouldn't even know where to begin to calculate the speed of light. But our blood carries the genes which can produce some incredibly intelligent people who can. And I find that amazing. People help make our lives easier and more pleasant. That's why we don't live in mud huts, dig wiggly things out of the ground to eat, or use sticks to knock fruit off the top of a tall cactus. The Maillard 4mm telescope that Miro and I saw was huge. Like I said, the reflecting mirror is 13 feet across. I'm not sure how long it takes to make one of these things, but the guide said that, and this was about 8 years ago, the guide says that while they're installing a large mirror like this one at the Chile Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory on February 12, 2012, just shortly before we were there. While they're installing the one, it was being built to study dark energy, and we're going to talk about that here next week. An accident occurred and put a tiny little crack in the mirror of the large telescope. He said the damage will delay the completion of the observatory until the year 2025, another 4 years ago. Occasionally, these telescopes have to be dismantled for resurfacing. The glass on most mirrors, it covers like a silver. We know that, at least the old mirrors. There's a silver and then a glass in front of it. But on these mirrors, it's called first surfacing, and the silver is on the outside of the glass instead of behind the glass. And unfortunately, this makes the silver being able, it will be maybe destroyed by air and that sort of thing. So it has to be replaced occasionally. And so the telescope lenses are already affixed to a huge, like a crane. And it lowers the telescope down into a huge bath of acid, I guess some type of acid. And it dissolves all the silver off of the old glass. And that takes a while. It had to be lowered down, the silver through the acid bath, it washed off. Then, when it's completed, the new silver is applied through a process called vacuum deposition. The silver is so thin that they apply on this glass, on this 13-foot glass, so thin on this Maillard telescope, 4 millimeter telescope, they said the amount of silver would be the amount of like 4, what do they call it, paper clips. 4 paper clips. The amount of silver to cover this huge 13-foot diameter piece of glass of this telescope. And even though it takes several days to get all this preparation done, the application of silver takes only a few seconds. I was again amazed by the sheer intellect of our people and the things they have been able to accomplish. I mean, we just stop and think the way, the things that our people have done. Proverbs 3:19. Proverbs 3:9 says, "The Lord by wisdom has founded the earth, by understanding hath he established the heavens." We have this huge, vast universe, enormous universe, hundreds of thousands of light years to visit some of the stars. The amazing power of the universe, the amazing power of God, that he spoke to his words, and the universe was established. So I'm amazed at just this one simple thing of building this telescope, peering into the sky. I'm amazed by the be able to capture the speed of light. I don't even know how they do that, but somebody on our team did. Like I said, it was up to me. It was up to me. I'll be weaving baskets. They probably wouldn't look very good. The bean eaters probably do a much better job of weaving baskets than I can. But we have within us the amazing genes that God had put into our people to create a society, a peaceful society, a civilization that we produce those kind of people. All those things amaze me. But the thing that amazes me the most, and I'm going to close with this until next week. The thing that amazes me the most is how willing our people are. How willing they are to toss it all away. How willing our people are to toss away the heritage of 1,000 generations. Just cast it away. I find that even more amazing. How easily we are, how willing we are, our people, to take the great inheritance we have and to cast it away. Now, like I said, and I warned you, up to this point may be somewhat pointless, perhaps. I don't know. So you need to come next week, or at least listen to it on the internet for the last 2-3 minutes. And you understand what is the most amazing thing of all. The title of my message next week can be The Dark Energy of God. You always think of God as being the light, but there is a dark energy of God. You have to watch it come next week, and you find out more about that. So, let's all have a word of prayer. Our Father, we thank you for the people you've sent to us. We thank you for the people that made our lives easier. All kinds of things. Too numerous to mention. They weren't satisfied just to sit there and watch, but they went forward. They stood on the coastlines of Europe and they looked across the sea. They went to new lands. The scientific discoveries of our people, the musical discoveries, the discoveries in medicine, the discoveries of science, are all such amazing things. We thank you, Father, that you have sent us these things and sent us these people. We thank you for the great blessings you have given us and given our people. We continue to praise you evermore. Amen.
All right, everyone, please be standing. And turn to hymn number 120. Hymn number 120. This is Blessed Assurance. We're the closing hymn today. Hymn number 120. Blessed